next topic, continuous improvement culture. Okay, so building and sustaining a culture of continuous improvement is fundamental for the long-term success of lean initiatives. So what steps have you taken to build and sustain a culture of continuous improvement? Sam, you can start.
So definitely, I typically like to start with the fundamentals. So a solid daily management process with some visual management on the shop floor and on the site. That for me is key. Followed by, I would say, a training on the 7 or 8 wastes, as you'd like to refer to them. So people need to be able to identify waste and see it in their everyday operations. So now, if you mix those two things with some basic 5S to have a workplace organization that is nice and clean, some standardized work where it's applicable, you start to have the foundations to build on that. So this, what it allows you to do is that you're able to see the gap to your standard through the visual management that you have in place, through the daily management system that is there. And once that's in place, you need to allow people a methodology to start problem solving, because now you're seeing that things aren't working because there's a gap to the standard. You put the system in place to see it, but the second phase, I would say, problem solving methodology that is standardized and integrated with your daily management system. So once you have those two elements, you're really able to see when things aren't going well, and you're able to take the problem solving methodology to address it. So that will sort of take care of your day-to-day operations. And I would say the third aspect that I see that is very, very important is a process to follow and to drive the improvement and breakthrough projects that you're trying to have. So that is sort of your transformation that you're trying to bring to the site, to the organization, but it needs to be managed in a stable process across a PMO or across a structure that is, disciplined and rigorous, and it allows you to have those results. So if you put those three aspects in place, you can manage your day-to-day operations, people can problem solve, and you have a structure to follow your big project, your transformational project and improvement projects. You can have a solid foundation that you're able to move the site to the next level. And obviously it goes with training and training and training. That goes without saying that people need to be engaged, leaders need to be engaged. So what I talked about is more the methodology, but the essence of people engagement always stays very important across the transformation.
Good. And is it possible to do in parallel, or what is your recommendation? Is to start with one of
Well,
them, or
I'm not a big fan of in parallel, and explain why. So as you start, if you want to start problem solving, well, that's great, but you need something to tell you what you're going to problem solve. So you need some sort of a basic of when things are going right and when things are not, and that's visual management. If you want to start, a basic 5S, but you don't have standardized work, you don't have standardized areas that you need to mark, you're going to do it and it's going to die through. So if you're doing a 5S project, typically what I'd like to do is, let's say, tie it down, the control phase of it, to your daily management system so you're able to sustain it. So I find that if you try to do it in parallel, sometimes you get a big boost, but it dies through. Whether when you have that foundational structure, you have pillars that you can always tie down to keep the progress alive and well, way after you leave the organization, because the processes are alive.
good? Thank you, Sam. So, David, how do you sustain this culture of continuous improvement?
So yeah, I don't want to echo a lot of what Sam mentioned because he did a very thorough explanation. But I think where I want to deep a little bit more is on the leadership side. I do believe that everything revolves around leadership. And I think about three practices that I personally like to follow. So one is making sure that we're communicating transparently, aligning priorities, and clear expectations. I think when we do that, teams understand what they're going to be measured on. Teams understand what they're going to be driving towards to. The other one, and this echoes a little bit of what Sam said, developing the teams that support us and that we support. I think that's critical, right? We have to intentionally develop our teams. Um, the other one is a very strong focus on systems and processes. I do believe that uh, in a lot of cases, processes and systems lack pre-specifications, standards. It could be that they're not understood by the teams, which end up allowing associates and associates creating workarounds, which may result in mistakes, defects, rework, or even accidents, right? So I do believe that as leaders, if we focus on those three things, will help to sustain and build a truly, CI lean culture.
Good. David, how do you align these priorities to the whole organization?
It is extremely difficult, as we all know, right? Because we do think, oh, we have cascading processes. We use X matrix. We use Hoshinkanri. So there are tools out there, methodologies that do help us do this consistently. However, I'm going to go back to it's a leadership decision, because in a lot of cases, we jump to the first fire we see in the morning. And I think we have to stay focused on what the true north is, right? Yes, we may have to react in some cases, but let's not deviate. Let's make sure that we have insight. Where is it that we're trying to go? And allocate the resources where we need to. In a lot of cases, I do believe that a lot of companies and a lot of teams we suffer of is still optimizing teams and areas that are running well, just because we keep getting better when we have big fires that actually will help us get to our true north. But that resource allocation, the prioritization exercises, I think those are exercises and things we need to drive towards there as leaders.
A few concepts I would add to that are, I think, just to touch on some of the brilliant basics that Sam really explicitly laid out, but celebrating successes is a key part of it. I think another element that wasn't touched on is when you're trying to make change, start small, integrate it, and then take your next steps. And use your plan, do, check, and adjust cycle to continuously cycle through and look back at what worked well and what do you need to continuously improve. And all the while, involve people, listen, get the feedback, and make sure that you're continually upskilling as you go to enable the potential of your people. And that way they feel motivated to do more, to be more involved, and the results, really will reflect that.
The other thing that I kept thinking as I was hearing you, Kelly, is, we all work, in global environments, right? And what I usually tell our plants in different regions is everybody's dealing with the same problems. But still, we like to fix it ourselves. I mean, we start getting the ball rolling in terms of best practice sharing globally and regionally, but still we're fairly slow, and we're still learning through that process. I think that's another big opportunity, and that will definitely help spread the culture across regions and industries within our companies.
It's funny that you say that, David. I was just at a conference last week with my colleagues from different sites. And, we have sites across France, Italy, Canada, and definitely different geographical locations. But when we meet up for those 2 days, it feels like the problems are exactly the same. We're tackling the same project. We're facing the same issues. So it's definitely a good point that you're touching here, that the problems are more or less the same across the whole globe.
Totally agree.